The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All right, sometimes I get the schedule a little bit screwed up. So about this time yesterday, I was telling you that Tony was off yesterday. Actually, he did a show. So if you were with us at 11 o'clock, you heard the Tony show. There's no Tony show today. I thought there might be one on Monday. He has worked Christmas in the past, but I found out yesterday there's no Tony show on Monday, but there will be an Andy Pollin show on Monday. And the reason for it is, well, a couple of reasons. One, I'm Jewish. I consider it a mitzvah to work on Christmas. It's a particular mitzvah when I can have people who celebrate the holiday have off. It doesn't quite work that way here, but I think it's important to be on the air the day after a Commanders game, even though it's a meaningless game on Sunday when they play the Jets. But we're at a point where just anything can happen, and we saw it happen with the Chargers last week, where it looked like they were going to allow Brandon Staley to finish the season, and they completely embarrassed themselves against the Raiders. The Raiders, who had scored exactly no points the week before in a 3-0 loss to the Minnesota Vikings, hung 63 on the Chargers, so they had to make a change. I don't think that's going to happen Sunday. I think that it will be a reasonably competitive game. Doesn't matter which team wins, though. I will say this, and I was talking to John Matthews, the news director at WMAL, a few minutes ago, and we're just talking about this game, and you know, this might be the last chance that they have to win this year, since they have San Francisco and Dallas coming in for the last two games, and those two teams look like they have something to play for, so they're not going to be resting people. They could be ugly games. But, you know, what do you do if you're a fan of the Commanders? Do you root for them to win their last game of the year, you know, the last chance to win, or realistically, what you want is the best possible draft pick, which would involve losing the game. And you may say, well, you know, in the long run, who knows what that means? But you may remember in the 2011 season, that was the season where Jay Gruden got fired, and they were, you know, just finishing up so that they could get on to the next coach. And they played a game at Miami. And finally, in like the fourth quarter, Ryan Fitzpatrick came in and played well enough to put the Dolphins back in the game. And had he come in at, say, halftime, the way that second half unfolded, it's quite possible that Ryan Fitzpatrick would have won that game. If he did, then Washington would have had the number one pick in 2012, and that would not have been RG3. That would have been Andrew Luck. And yes, Andrew Luck had a short career with the Colts, but when he played great, and he would have been drafted. Wait a minute, I'm confusing years. Excuse me. This would have been the year they would have gotten Joe Burrow. Okay, so I'm confused by that. Yeah, so it would have been the Joe Burrow year. I'm trying to think. I guess they did not have a chance. That's right. They didn't have a chance in 2012. So I'm all mixed up. But let me go back. Let me make the point again. The point being the 2019 season, where if they had lost to the Miami Dolphins, they would have had the number one pick, and instead of Chase Young, who turned out to be a huge disappointment here, the number 2 pick of the draft, who gets traded away for a third-round pick, they would have had Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow would have been the quarterback. I don't think they would have passed on him. I think even with Dwayne Haskins on the roster, a top 15 pick from the year before, they would have picked Joe Burrow. So back to the original point, the best interest of the team is to lose on Sunday. And we don't even know who's going to be the quarterback for the Jets. Probably Trevor Siemian. I can't imagine that after being benched yet another time, they're going to go back to Wilson. Maybe Zach Wilson is going to be out of concussion protocol, but who knows? I would expect them to start Trevor Siemian, and I would hope that Washington loses the game. We'll get to some thoughts from Eric Bieniemy yesterday, including what sounds like a pitch to come back next year, maybe as the head coach. But we had something happen last night in Columbus that we've been waiting a long time for. Alex Ovechkin, who had gone 14 games without a goal, that's the longest stretch of his career, finally, in overtime, this happened.
Ovechkin fires. Score! The great wait is over.
Hallelujah for OV. The fans booing here. We're loving life.
Yeah, Joe Beninati and Greg Laughlin, I think the best play-by-play duo that we have in town. They're just tremendous. And finally, Ovechkin gets the goal to not only get off the schneid personally, but to break this game's tie and give the Capitals yet another overtime win. They've been winning a bunch of these overtime games this year. It's really every game is close for them. They never have like a 6-2 win. It seems they have had a couple of ugly blowout losses, but they just don't seem to be able to comfortably put a game away. But it's another win, and it's goal number 6 for Ovechkin. Now, he is still 66 away from catching Wayne Gretzky. So realistically, if he's going to do this next year, he's probably got to leave like 40 goals still on the table. I think over 40, it's going to be difficult, which means that with 66 to go, he's got to score another 26, which would give him 31 for the year. I mean, the way it was setting up, you'd figure he would get maybe close to 40 this year, maybe a little bit more than 40, and then next year would get the record. If he leaves over 40, 44, 45, that's going to be tough, and it might have to extend into another season. I don't think it's going to extend long enough for when they play in Alexandria, but sometimes these records take a long time to get when you get close. And I remember my dad telling me about Early Wynn, who finally got his 300th win after, stretching it out 3 or 4 years with several teams. And he said, at that point, Early Wynn could barely see his shoes. He was so fat. But he managed to collect that 300th win and is now in the Hall of Fame. All right, so Ovechkin gets the goal. The Capitals get the win. Even the Wizards got a win last night, even though they were outscored 37-25 in the fourth quarter at Portland. I mean, they play zero defense. Portland's another bad team, but the Wizards hold on to win 118-117. I imagine they'll get smoked tonight in a back-to-back at Golden State. But, hey, almost 2 months into the season, they have their 5th win of the year. All right, to the Commanders. And Eric Bieniemy has his day every Thursday. It's coordinator day. Jack Del Rio used to have his day, but Jack Del Rio is no longer here. So we don't hear from Ron Rivera, who serves as his own defensive coordinator, but we do hear from Eric Bieniemy every Thursday. And most of the conversation had to do with Sam Howell and the benching of Howell last Sunday in Los Angeles. And this is Bieniemy on why it came to that, and more so self-inflicted on the part of Howell than anything else.
You can apply a lot of pressure on yourself, and you're seeing a lot, but you're not seeing anything. And so sometimes that happens, and he's a young kid, and hear me when I say this. He wants to be perfect. He wants to be great. He can tell you everything that he did wrong, and he's very self-aware of all the mistakes that he made. And he also understands his accountability and the lack of that he didn't have in that game, but he also understands how important it is for him to be decisive and right because it impacts everyone else. So he's still finding ways to grow, and this is a part of that growth process. So I think another thing, I thought we did a great job when we pulled him because it gave him an opportunity to take a break, to sit back, inhale, exhale, and watch Jacoby play, and watch Jacoby run a similar number of plays, and how a veteran just handled a lot of the things that was presented to him. And I'll say this, sometimes without any bad luck, we wouldn't have any good luck at all. Because I think sometimes sitting back and watching someone else do it can have a major impact in helping him to continue to grow.
I wonder about one thing. When he says he got an opportunity, Hal did, to watch Bieniemy play. Could they have done that at the beginning of the season and just see how far they went? They did win their first 2 games. They got smoked by Buffalo in the 3rd game, and that's, when the season really took a turn. But given the way we saw the quarterback play in the fourth quarter there, could it be that might have been the answer at the beginning of the year, and then bring Howell along instead of throwing him out there, developing him, watching him take his lumps in games like the Dallas game on Thanksgiving and the Miami game. Both of them, they gave up 45 points. What's he still doing out on the field? Well, you heard Ron Rivera say that he needed to make the mistakes. He needed to grow through that. And then all of a sudden, in a game that was very similar to the previous two, he benches him. He benches him after a terrible interception. I mean, it was really a bad throw. But, could they have possibly maybe even, stayed in the race or at least made it a more competitive season instead of having this developmental year for Howell? I guess we'll never know. This is on how Howell handled the benching on Sunday with what Bieniemy says yesterday.
Immediately after the game, he was disappointed, which you expected. But it wasn't that he was disappointed in us playing Jacoby. He was disappointed in self, okay? On top of that, when I had an opportunity to spend some time with him throughout the course of the week on Monday and Tuesday, he was just reflective of the things that took place and the things that he could have done better. And the thing that I'm excited about is he's still a sponge and he's learning. And he's realizing that, you know what, I got to be on top of my game. And it ain't that he has to play extraordinary every week, but he has to be on top of his game. And I love the resiliency in him. I think more than anything is forcing him to go back to the basics. Okay, is forcing him to just take a broad picture on everything and just making sure that he's not taking anything for granted. And so evaluating him, I'm evaluating him each and every week, but I can see, some of the little things that he was taking for granted that he's not taking for granted at this particular moment. But that's just the growth process of a quarterback, because normally in year two, you see a lot of things because sometimes they think they know it all. And I remember, not so much, and I say that in a negative way, they know the offense, but now, okay, because they've had a year underneath their belt, there's certain things that they just see and second-guess themselves rather than being decisive.
Now, the most important thing, the most newsworthy thing that Eric Bieniemy said yesterday was this, and it's a question from David Aldridge, leading to what sounds like a pitch from Bieniemy to stay. Now, if he stays, there's two possibilities. One, he's under contract as the offensive coordinator. So it's quite possible a new coach could come in and would be given the option of keeping Eric Bieniemy and may want to do that if Bieniemy doesn't have a head coaching opportunity someplace else. Or do they make the move to make Eric Bieniemy the head coach? Wouldn't rule it out. There's been some regression with Sam Howell and some questioning of the play calling and so forth. But, Bieniemy, what you'll hear here is what sounds like if he were sitting in front of somebody making this decision, whether it's Josh Harris or a president of football operations who he hires or a general manager, this sounds like a pitch of, hey, give us another year. Give Sam Howell and me another year and see how this develops. Now, this could also play into draft strategy as well. If they buy this, Bieniemy, what sounds like a pitch for Howell and himself, if they buy this and say this is the direction we want to go, it's damn cheap. They're going to have Howell for $1.1 million and $1.2 million over the next 2 years. If you want to go in this direction, frees up a lot of room, your salary cap, to sign other players, to sign some offensive linemen, which they desperately need, some players in the secondary, a couple of defensive ends with Sweat and Young both gone. That's there. So this was about running it back another year, Howell and Bieniemy. How important would that be? How good could that possibly be?
Immediately after the game, he was disappointed, which you expected.
That's not it.
But
that's not it. This is the question. Second year with Howell and Bieniemy.
It'll do wonders, because it'll be one of those deals that, hey, he's been there and done that. Now, would it be one of those years where you'll just say he's the next Hall of Fame quarterback? I'm not going to say that, but just the growth. having the conversations, and as we're talking, I know he can piece together the sentences and the statements that I'm going to make to him. So that's very important, and obviously it continues, with his growth process and his evolution of him becoming the quarterback that he has to become. Because right now, honestly, he's learning the system. He's still continuing to learn the system. There's other things he has to learn too. There's a lot of complex defensive coordinators out there. They're going to present different issues to him. And that's a major test each and every week. And so not only is he being tested by us and being evaluated, but on top of that, he's being tested by what he's seeing every single play. So he has to learn how to process that information. And when those things can become secondary to him, now the game can slow down for him. And so a second year would be outstanding because it will help him to continue that growth process.
And what would it allow you to do in terms of building the offseason, starting with the OTAs through camp, if you had some continuity going forward?
Now you just continue adding and building on what we've already established. You're still establishing the culture and the way we do things, but on top of that, just adding on to what we've done offensively. Getting creative with the personnel groups and moving guys around and just challenging them to making sure that they have a complete understanding as well. Because when it's all said and done with, you want all your players to grasp your system, okay? Year 2 is the year when everyone normally takes off because of the language barrier that they've had to learn. And so now they start understanding the concepts, they can start preaching, and now they can start teaching, all right, the younger guys to have a complete understanding, because now those guys become the coaches on the field, okay? Everything that you're talking about, it's coming from them verbatim, and that's when you know that you have it in the right way, to have it in the right direction.
Now, I would never suggest that Sam Howell is Patrick Mahomes, but you could look at it this way. Last year they had another system. It's got Turner as the offensive coordinator. And although Howell was in the system for a year, he only played one game. So now he's played a year under this system, and maybe he makes the big step up the next year. With Mahomes, you might remember, they had Alex Smith his rookie year. Mahomes didn't play. Maybe one game at the end of the year where they were resting Smith for the playoffs. And then in year 2 in the system, remember, it was the second year, much like it's the second year for Howell now, but it was the second year in the system for Patrick Mahomes, and that's where he started to achieve this kind of stardom that he now has when, he got the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game and they lost to Tom Brady and the Patriots because in overtime Brady took the Patriots down the field and scored a touchdown, and they went on to win their last Super Bowl. But what he's saying is, give us another year together. He didn't promise Patrick Mahomes, but, if you look at the similarities there, and although Howell does have a similar style, he's certainly not as talented as Patrick Mahomes, but, it's tantalizing, and that's something that I'm sure is going to be very much considered by whoever is in charge once they clean house at the end of the season. But they've got Bieniemy. As long as he doesn't take a job as a head coach, they can hang on to him as the offensive coordinator until it's decided by whoever coaches the team or whoever's running the team doesn't want him anymore. So, interesting. Coming up, Christmas and football. Tress Way with some fun thoughts on that as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Ravens preview coming up at 10:30. They got the game of the week playing at San Francisco, which could be a preview of the Super Bowl. Before we get to some fun Christmas thoughts from Tress Way, it was 20 years ago today that Isaiah Thomas was hired as president of basketball operations for the New York Knicks. Thus began one of the most disastrous tenures in the history of sports. As part of that run, 4 full seasons, he coached 2 years. His record as a coach and an executive, 112 and 216. They did sneak into the playoffs in 2004 with a 39 and 43 record, but were swept by the Nets. They had not missed the playoffs 3 straight years since 1984 to 1987. Among the things that happened during the Isaiah Thomas run of disaster, in 2007, a jury found Thomas had sexually harassed team executive Anuka Brown Sanders and fired her inappropriately after she complained about the harassment. A jury awarded her $11.6 million in punitive damages. They did not, though, find Thomas personally liable for those damages. So that came out of the company, not out of his pocket. 2005, Thomas hired Larry Brown, made him the highest paid coach in NBA history, 5-year deal worth between $50 and $60 million. Brown lasted 1 year, which was lowlighted by a feud with point guard Stephon Marbury. Brown's contract was bought out. Thomas then became the coach. Before his first season as coach, he acquired Bulls center Eddie Curry in a trade that would come to define his tenure. In the trade, he gave the Knicks 2006 first-round pick, which became LaMarcus Aldridge, and swapped picks with the Bulls in 2007. That year, Chicago took Joakim Noah, 9th overall, while the Knicks took Wilson Chandler at 23. By making a few other blunders, Thomas proved he was incapable of judging big men. With Andrew Bynum on the board in 2005, he took Channing Frye. That same offseason, he signed Jerome James to a 5-year, $30 million contract, despite James never averaging more than 5.4 and 4.2 rebounds in his previous 5 seasons. He reported to the Knicks out of shape, played a total of 90 games over 4 years, traded to the Bulls in 2009. It was disaster from top to bottom. And Isaiah has a history of just destroying things. He killed the Continental Basketball League. And even with all that, James Dolan, the owner of the Madison Square Garden, the Knicks, he hired Thomas as president of the New York Liberty. And that lasted a little while and didn't go very well. I mean, it was just remarkable how poorly Isaiah performed as an executive and for that matter, as a coach. Just amazing. All right, football this weekend. A lot of football on both Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day. I mean, this used to be kind of a day that they stated, nope, we don't have just one Monday game. We have 3 Monday games on Christmas. And, of course, a full slate on Sunday, which is Christmas Eve. Tress Way has gotten used to this. He's the longest tenured commander. He's been here for 10 years and was chatting with reporters the other day about how it is with his family and basically having to work on Christmas.
I think what's been fun whenever we played at home on Christmas it's become such a family and friend like destination. But it's something that, I mean, dude, it's not something that lasts forever, and it's something that we're very thankful for. Like, you know, my son still tells his friends that, you know, like, Dad does football. And for the people that don't know, like, my son's dad, he'll ask other dads. He's like, hey, like, what team does your dad play for? You know, and so he just assumes, hey, it's Christmas. You know, everybody's dad goes to work, does football, and so it's just fun that that's their reality. That this is our life right now, and it's there's definitely a lot to be thankful for. And this time of year is the time we're probably supposed to be the most thankful for that kind of stuff. So it's a cool experience, man.
Have you gotten back to the top spot in your son's favorite player power rankings, or are you still down the list a little?
I tell you what, if I'd have ran that ball for a first down, I might have made it. But I don't know. Terry had a heck of a game, so I think Terry's still holding down the 1 seed. Yeah.
Thank you. Something on your Christmas list this year?
Yes, I love cooking, and so, God, I sound like such a dad. I want a really good air fryer. I know that's so bad. Like, I used to have cool gifts, but I want a really good air fryer. I don't even know what that looks like. I don't even know if that's realistic or if they're expensive, but I just...
There's a lot.
Is it good?
It's pretty good.
Okay, there you go.
Good wings.
Yeah, see, there you go. I just want... I'm lacking some crispiness in some of my dishes that I've heard good things of the air fryer, and then also heard about pressure cookers. I've heard pressure cookers do a wonder, but yeah, so if anybody wants to send one to the facility, just go for it. Yeah.
So are you a big kid still as far as toys, fighting your kids for their toys? What would be your favorite toy?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing where I'm still a kid is my daughter's really into board games, card games, things like that. And you would think, oh, he's got a sweet 5-year-old daughter. No way, man. I just try and take her down. Uno, don't care. And she's tough. We learned Trouble recently. She'll come freaking hunting for you and laughs in your face if she lands on you. So yeah, I try and take her down. But that has been the funnest part is she's into games now. Oh, Harper Lynn, she's a good 2 seed in the family. I'm holding the top spot though.
He's good. And there was a time when offensive linemen ruled the airwaves here. Doc Walker is still on the air, although he was kind of different in that he was a tight end and considered an offensive lineman in some regards and also considered a receiver in others. But Joe Jacoby did a lot of radio and TV. Jeff Bostic did a lot of that, and that was partly because the team was good and winning. We haven't seen a punter who has really emerged as a media star, but I think that whenever it is over for Tress Way, and, punters can last, I guess, a long time. He's been doing it here for 10 years. Who's to say he couldn't do another 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years? But at some point, you can hear it. I mean, he understands the whole deal, and he understands how to do that kind of thing and what the media is looking for. So he really embraces that. I think he does some podcasting and things like that. So I would think that the next ex-Washington football team player to emerge as a media star is probably going to be Tress Way. And he says he's okay. And actually, he said when Cameron Cheeseman was cut the other day, they went out to lunch. They had like a 3-hour lunch. And he felt bad about the whole thing. And when he was hurt, remember he was hurt in the game against the Rams, and they thought he might have to miss the second half. When he found out he was okay, he said, please get word to Cheese as quickly as possible that I'm going to be fine. So good guy and a good guy to listen to. Coming up in the next hour, we got Ravens preview. We'll look at the huge game they've got on Monday night at San Francisco. And also, what is the future of the tush push? Troy Vincent, head of football operations for the NFL, with an update on that. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollard Show, ESPN 630. Yes, Big Football Friday. Not here. We got the dud coming up on Sunday as the Commanders go to New York to play the Jets, but it doesn't get any bigger than the Ravens and the 49ers on Monday night. Christmas night, they are meeting in San Francisco, and the 49ers are 5.5-point favorites, which has rankled some of the players on the Ravens, some of the fans. We'll get into all of that with Ravens preview coming up at 10:30. You'll hear Kyle Hamilton, who, kind of says they're a little insulted by that, but they'll show it on the field. They'll show it on the field on Sunday. We will get to that. But as part of the picture of that game, it's the MVP race. And in many ways, it could help to be decided by what happens on the field, because both Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy are high candidates for this honor, and Purdy right now is leading the odds to get the MVP. But I got Rex Minturn here, and I want to ask him this question. There's a guy who bought a ticket at BetMGM Sportsbook before the season, betting that Brock Purdy would win the MVP. And he purchased the ticket for $2,000. If Purdy wins the MVP, he would win $200,000. Okay, so he's now selling the ticket on Prop Swap, and he wants to sell it for $100,000. Reportedly, according to Darren Ravel, he turned down $90,000. So 2 parts: would you pay $100,000 if you had it for this ticket? And part 2, if you own the ticket, would you sell it for $100,000?
I definitely wouldn't buy it, because then it's not as sweet as like hitting your own future.
True.
And if I owned it, I mean, usually a lot of books offer you the option to cash out, so you get slightly less than you would. I would consider that. Yeah.
What do you mean, Kat? You mean you could get just slightly less than $200,000?
Yeah.
Really?
To cash out right now, yeah.
Well, why would you then offer it up for $100,000?
I've never heard that pick swap thing.
You mean I don't know that. You mean you're telling me that if Brock Purdy wins the MVP, he gets the full $200,000, but if he cashes in early, he gets only slightly less than that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's 3 games to go. What if Brock Purdy gets hurt in Monday's game?
I almost cashed. I bet against the Wizards last night, and I almost cashed out.
Yeah, but those are smaller bets. That's not $200,000.
Well, I've never bet.
Yeah, you never bet $200,000. I think most people would take that. Yeah, bird in the hand. I don't know. Anyway, the current odds, the true value of the ticket. This is how I guess they figure in with the odds of him winning, because he is leading. It's $133,000. So and then things shift too. Just this past week, going into last week's action, Purdy was behind Dak Prescott. Prescott stunk it up against the Buffalo Bills. He's now number 3 behind Lamar Jackson. And then you got some long shots like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts and Christian McCaffrey and Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa, and Tyreek Hill, who's been out. He got hurt in the game before and sat out last week. The numbers for Lamar and Brock are pretty close. Lamar's got less passing yardage, as you would expect, but he's got a lot more rushing yards, 741. Both of them have thrown 7 interceptions. Purdy's thrown 12 more touchdown passes, 29 touchdowns to 17 for Lamar. But I also think if you look at this, if you take Brock Purdy off the 49ers and you insert another good quarterback, they're still a contending team. If you take Lamar Jackson away from the Ravens and put in, or let's say you swap them. Now, I think the 49ers would still be a great team with Lamar Jackson. With Brock Purdy and the Ravens, I don't think they'd be as good, do you?
No,
I don't think so either. So,
what do you think, Sam Howell on the Niners? What's their record?
Well, then you got the coaching of Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah,
you don't know, but I think what we've seen from Sam Howell is that he takes a lot of sacks. Like
he doesn't have the decision making.
Yeah, right. I mean that's part of playing for Kyle Shanahan. And although Sam Howell going into his junior year was considered to be a potential top draft pick, you had Brock Purdy playing 4 full years at Iowa State, which helps. And both of them really did come under the radar. You think between the two of them, you got the last pick of the draft and a 5th rounder. But yeah, interesting stuff, as we like to say. All right, let me get to more on this. This is Tony and Mike last night on PTI as they looked at this matchup and the fact that the Ravens are, I think, pretty big underdogs. You would think, generally speaking, a game like this, they'd go in as 3-point underdogs. 5.5 seems to be a slap in the face. And this was the take from Tony and Mike on that last night on PTI.
Vegas has made the Niners a 5.5-point favorite, a number that Ravens corner Marlon Humphrey said hurt his feelings, and to which his teammate, safety Kyle Hamilton, said, "We feel a little disrespected." Tony, should the Ravens feel surprised that the Niners are so heavily favored?
Well, I will concede to you that when I saw the line was 5.5, I was surprised. I don't think it's disrespect to Baltimore at all. I'm trying to figure out why you would do it, because you have Baltimore going all the way across the country, and you have San Francisco lately really pounding good teams.
Yeah, 6 in a row,
like
I think?
Philadelphia, like Dallas, like Jacksonville. So I can't get up to 5.5, and the reason I can't get up to 5.5 is Lamar Jackson. I mean, you have to game plan completely for Lamar Jackson. San Francisco has 4 different guys that can score from any point on the field, but they don't have anybody like Lamar Jackson.
No.
And Lamar Jackson has not been good at all in the playoffs, but in the regular season, he's been great. Mike, 56-19 in the regular season. I just think Lamar Jackson is healthy now, seems to be happy with his contract, 8-1 in his last 9, and he makes something out of nothing better than anybody in the league.
I tried to make the case a couple of days ago, sometime this week, that Purdy might be my MVP. And because he's played that well. And then Marcus Spears gave the best counter to that reasoning, and it's a slam dunk. And he said, as great as Purdy's been, and he allows that Purdy's been great, he's not the first guy that any defensive coordinator would say you have to plan for in San Francisco.
That's right.
They're going to say, Debo, or they're going to say the running back who's been maybe the MVP himself. And McCaffrey. But if you're talking about Baltimore, the first name is Lamar Jackson. It is. And so Lamar Jackson should be in the catbird seat for MVP. I'm excited I don't care about the line. I don't look at the line. I wouldn't know what the line is. I've never looked at it. Huh? I've been doing this for 43 years. Here's how many times I've ever looked at a line. Never. I don't care.
Okay.
The teams are even. It's a pick 'em
The
to
Ravens
me,
looked at it because they're upset by it.
They are.
And you know what, Mike? It feels like a Super Bowl preview. It does. It feels like it. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think that you got to like the 49ers at home in this game, and you also have to look at how they have played recently. They did have a 3-game losing streak. That happened to them, but they seem to be back on track, and both offensively and defensively hitting on all cylinders. I'll go over the numbers coming up at 10:30. I compared and contrasted. Both of them are at the top of the league in almost all categories, but there is one statistical category where they're separated, and that could be, as we say, the tail of the tape for that game. Meantime, we've just had the owners' meetings, which took place in Dallas this past week, and they'll get to the point, I guess, in the spring where they will vote on some new rules. And while there seemed to be, no pun intended, a push to get rid of the tush push, like mid-season, like, oh, this is ridiculous, this isn't football, now we're starting to hear, like, no, not necessarily. And look, you saw what the Commanders did around the goal line against the Rams. If it was so easy to do, everybody would do it and do it well. And not everybody can. And the Eagles have figured this out. And it seems to be that the sentiment from around the league is that if you think it's so easy to do it yourself. Find a way to get your 1 yard whenever you need it on 4th down. So Troy Vincent, now he did spend most of his career with the Eagles, but he works for the league now, so he has to be impartial on this. But Troy Vincent was on with Rich Eisen this week, and his feeling about the tush push is ain't going anywhere.
I don't think so. And I shared this with the membership a week ago, and then our Player Health and Safety Committee, led by Ronnie Lott and Curtis Martin, we met last week in Dallas, and we discussed the play. And it was very clear that the player says don't punish, in particular, Philly for being able to execute that play. A year ago, we studied it. The last 2 years, we've studied it. It's a play that has evolved. And I raised that to the membership, and we talked about that as a committee. You see different design pass plays. We saw even the other night in the Philly-Seattle game where people are starting to do some things outside. It's just not like a normal quarterback sneak up and people are pushing. So the play has evolved. And I think it stays. I really do. I think it stays. Is it an ugly play? People say that. What we have to monitor is what's the unintended consequences of the player taking that in his own hand and trying to defend that. We see that, we saw the other night, Bobby Wagner come over top.
Yes.
We saw when San Francisco did it with Fred Warner coming over top. We want to make sure that player, is safe with those consequences to make that choice to go up there. So, but it was a healthy discussion around the push play and making sure that, one, we don't we don't take away a play that they execute really well and others don't away from the game.
Yeah, I saw DeAndre Swift ran one. They handed it off to him off of the push play, but we also saw Kelsey get popped for moving the football a little bit further up than where it was spotted. We also saw yet another offensive offsides call. Is that prevalence of that call
so Rick,
coming off of this?
That's really, really, really good thought there. We saw that a year ago when we were studying the play. What can we do better to officiate it?
Mm-hmm.
And that is just making sure that players are properly aligned and no one is encroaching that neutral zone or no one's lined up offside. We've seen and we've let Philadelphia know, hey, that movement of the ball, by the movement of the ball, you moving it 6 inches or, you're moving it, you now put the defender automatically in the neutral zone, which he's offside. So we as an officiating group can officiate the play more efficiently from just a formation standpoint of where people are aligned.
And that includes plays that aren't even in the brotherly shove, like, say, the end of Kansas City and Buffalo. Like now you're seeing more offensive offsides focus based on that.
Yes, and that's been that way all season long. You hear about the warning, stop it. They did that when I played during my era. They'll just tell me, hey, 23, get your hands off. Hey, 23, let it go. But you're getting paid to line up properly, as we would say, line up to call your alignment, assignment, and then you play ball. We should not have people aiding us and telling us whether I'm good or bad. So that's play the game. It's enough gamesmanship going on. There's already difficult to officiate the game. Now, when you put gamesmanship, you got to do other responsibilities that should be someone else's responsibility. But that has been a focus all season long about making sure people are lined up properly.
It's Troy Vincent from the league executive, telling you that he believes that the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, is going to stay. And when they do address the rules coming up in the spring, that the owners are likely, or the competition committee, which includes coaches, I guess, will vote to keep it. And you'll see more teams working on it. It's that's the way things go. They're going to have when they have tryouts for offensive linemen, that's going to be part of the picture. Can you get us that extra yard? I mean, can you do what Jason Kelsey has taught everybody to do around him and get that extra little push up the middle, and the running backs who come from behind and shove the quarterback in there. They never had to do that with Tom Brady. Tom Brady didn't really seem to have any problem picking up that yard. Now, maybe it was because he could read the defense so well and he knew what little hole he could kind of slip through. But, when I would see, and I still see, on these 4th and 1 plays, a quarterback lining up in shotgun, it makes me sick. It's just ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense. All right, let's do a little baseball here. This is from reports that I guess it's going to be official, if it's not official yet, that the pitch clock is going to be reduced to 18 seconds rather than 20 with men on base, and the league will widen the runner's lane between home plate and first base to include the dirt between the foul line and the infield grass, and a pitcher who warms up on the mound must face at least one hitter. The 18 seconds instead of 20, great. The shorter they can make it, the better. Enough of this stare-down stuff. Let's get in there and play baseball. The widening of the lane, now this goes back to the 2019 series. Remember the Trey Turner play where I think Davey Martinez was ejected for that, and he got hit in the back with the ball, and the umpire ruled that he had run out of the baseline. He'd run too far inside of it. So now they've widened that and giving a little bit more leeway to the runner. And a pitcher who warms up must face at least one hitter. That makes total sense. Now here's the thing about these rules. Players voted against this last year. They didn't want the pitch clock. They didn't want to do that. Well, it turned out to be a great thing. It reduced the time of the game from 2 hours or 2 hours and 40 minutes, 24 minutes faster than 2022, and a half an hour faster than 2021, the fastest since 1985. Batting averages rose 6 points to 249. Stolen base success rate reached a record high. That was partly because you limited the pickoff attempt. That was a big factor in that. And then attendance was up. Attendance was up nearly 10% last year. So it all worked out. Here's the thing. The competition committee, which votes on these rules, it's comprised of 6 owners, 4 players, and 1 umpire. So even if the umpire sides with the players, they still lose. How could the Players Association agree to this? That's insane. I didn't know this. I just saw this today. Competition committee, 6 owners, 4 players, 1 umpire. So whenever the owners want to make moves, they do it. Tony Clark is head of the Players Association. This wouldn't have happened with Don Fehr. I covered the lockout of 1990. Don Fehr was a humorless guy. He didn't care about the good old pastime. He was there to do what was right for his people, for the union. I'm stunned by that. I really am. That really is crazy. That the owners can basically vote for whatever they want. You know, the worst it can be is 6-5. 1 umpire, 4 players, and 6 owners. Really? Here's more rules. New pitchers will get 2 minutes rather than 2 minutes and 15 seconds to get ready. Okay, so what? Mound visits will be reduced from 5 to 4 with 1 extra for the 9th when necessary. I don't know how they determine what's necessary, maybe a 1-run game, something like that. The clock will restart after a dead ball when the pitcher has the ball, even if he is not on the mound, meaning he cannot delay the game by walking around the edge of the mound with the ball. Now, that might be significant. I mean, I wonder if you could add those up for a game. That's an edge that a pitcher would have. You know, he's not ready until he steps on the mound. Now, if he gets the ball, if he has the ball in his hand, he's got to step up and get ready to pitch. Max Scherzer has been dead set against this stuff. Scherzer, from what I understand, is going to need surgery that's going to keep him out a good part of the season. So when he comes back, there'll be, I guess, an adjustment for him as well with that. And also the pitch clock without runners on base will stay at 15 seconds. So I think anything you can do to get this game like 2 hours and 20 minutes to 2 hours and a half, that's about right. And, we had watchable playoff and World Series games this year. We have these we had long games, but we were routinely having games that lasted 9 innings and went over 4 hours. We don't have that anymore. Good. Dodgers, another signing. I hope I pronounced this first name correctly. Yoshinobu, I think, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He has signed with the Dodgers for $325 million. It's a 12-year deal. It's 2 years longer than Ohtani and less than half the money, but between the two of them, that's over $1 billion in salary committed to two players. Wow. The Dodgers are also going to pay an additional $50.6 million to Yamamoto's previous teams, the Oryx Buffaloes. So, that's another little check they're going to have to write there. Now, he does have a couple of opt-outs in his contract, and he'll receive $50 million in bonus money. Shohei Ohtani, most of his money is deferred, $680 million, and Yamamoto doesn't have any deferred money. They're both doing well. We don't have to have a benefit for either one of them. But if you're not familiar with Yamamoto, it's not big. Pitcher's generally big. He's 5'10", 176 pounds. 5'10", 176. I mean, we've seen small pitchers succeed, but that's not a great size. Ohtani's big. He's like 6'3". Yamamoto does not lift weights. He relies on a regimen of body weight exercises, stretches, and a significant amount of throwing, from tiny soccer balls to mini javelins to long toss and bullpens with regulation size baseball. So that's going to be one of the more fascinating parts of this upcoming season, watching what the Dodgers do. And with either of those contracts, the one thing that you really, really fear is injury. You're not going to get Ohtani pitching this year because he's had the Tommy John surgery, so he's not going to pitch. He's just going to DH. And you hope with all this money that you invested in Yamamoto that there is no injury, because he's although it's high-level baseball in Japan, it's a different level in the major leagues. Who knows? Just who knows? That's the whole fear of that. But, the Dodgers, I'm sure the way the money works in sports these days, having two very high-profile Japanese players is going to be good for the bottom line. I don't know how it works, but somehow that's got to be good for the bottom line. And then this, before we get to Ravens preview. The Pistons lost again last night. One of the 5 wins that the Wizards have is against the Pistons, and they have now lost 25 straight games. They match or are one short. Now, they're one short of the league record, which is held by the 2010-2011 Cleveland Cavaliers. That's just after LeBron made his decision. And the 2013-2014 76ers. Each of those teams lost 26 straight. The 76ers technically hold the mark at 28. That started in the 2014-15 season, carried over into 15-16. Either way, it's all bad. It stinks. And the Pistons last night, it seemed like this was their best chance to end the streak. They're playing at home. You got Utah playing the second of a back-to-back on the road, and they're without 4 of their top 7 scorers, including Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson. And they come in and they win. They beat them last night. And the Pistons are now 2-26. And this will sound familiar, the fans were chanting, "Sell the team, sell the team." The owner is Tom Gores, Gores, and his Platinum Equity firm. Detroit plays Saturday night in Brooklyn. This is great. Cade Cunningham, he was the top scorer for Detroit last night in this loss, 119-111. He had 28 points and 10 assists. He said, "We're not 22-6 bad. No way we are that bad. No, you're that bad. It's what Bill Parcells says. You are what your record says you are." And the Detroit Pistons are 2-26. 2 and 26. And then, their shooting was bad. They went 1 for 10 on threes in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's just unbelievable how bad they are. And, you'd think back-to-back on the road, team coming in without top players, that's your one chance. Don't you even get up for that, saying, okay, I know we're overmatched by a lot of teams in the league, but this is a chance to win, and you lose that game? Wow. Philadelphia 76ers in 1972-73, they have the record for the most losses. They lost 73 games. It's not the worst percentage. There was a year where we had a lockout and the season was shortened, and I think it was another team, I forget, that holds the record for fewest wins. But they had the most losses, 9 and 73. That's one of the worst teams I've ever seen. They had Fred Mad Dog Carter, was a pretty good player. Hal Greer was at the end of his career, 15-year career, had been a great player. Billy Cunningham was off to the ABA. There were a lot of things there that worked against them. But this is outrageous. I mean, in the NBA, especially with load management, teams coming in like off a back-to-back road game, you'd have a chance to win, but they don't. They stink. That's unbelievable. And fans chanting, "Sell the team." Well, eventually it worked out well here. I don't know if it'll work out as well for the Pistons, but that's at least they're showing up. That's at least they still care. The next step is they don't show up at all. Ravens preview is coming up next. We'll talk to Kevin Ostreicher. He's with Locked On Ravens, and we'll get a preview of this enormous game on Monday night as the Ravens play at San Francisco. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.